In the annals of American history, certain narratives remain shrouded in a veil of discomfort, whispered rather than openly discussed. These are the stories that challenge our modern sensibilities, forcing us to confront the complex interplay of isolation, societal norms, and the enduring power of human connection, even when that connection transgresses deeply held taboos. This is one such story, a journey into the seldom examined corners of the past where the lines of family, love, and procreation became tragically blurred. It is the tale of a man whose life, though perhaps an extreme outlier, serves as a stark, unsettling window into the historical realities of consanguineous relationships in the United States, particularly in isolated communities where circumstance often dictated the very fabric of existence. The title itself, he had three sons with his own sister, the most inbred man in U.S. history, is designed to provoke, to draw attention to a phenomenon that, while universally taboo in contemporary society, held a far more nuanced and often tragic place in the historical landscape of America. To understand such a narrative, we must first shed the judgments of the present and immerse ourselves in the harsh realities of the past. For centuries, across various cultures and continents, marriage between close relatives, including cousins and, in rarer instances, siblings, was not always viewed with the same universal condemnation it is today. Economic necessity, the preservation of family lineage and property, and the sheer lack of available partners in geographically isolated regions often superseded biological concerns or moral strictures that would later become enshrined in law and social custom. In the nascent United States, particularly as settlers pushed westward into vast, untamed territories, or carved out lives in secluded mountain hollows and remote islands, isolation became a defining characteristic for many communities. These were worlds unto themselves, where contact with outsiders was minimal and the pool of potential spouses was inherently limited to those within one's immediate vicinity. Such conditions, while fostering strong community bonds and self-reliance, inadvertently created environments ripe for endogamy, the practice of marrying within a specific social or geographical group. The Appalachian Mountains, the subject of many historical accounts of genetic isolation, serve as a prime example. Here, the rugged terrain and dense forests acted as natural barriers, effectively cutting off communities from the broader societal currents. Families settled deep within hollows, their lives intertwined with the land and with each other, often for generations. While the popular stereotype of widespread, rampant inbreeding in Appalachia is largely a harmful exaggeration rooted in classism and prejudice, it is undeniable that the geographical isolation did, in some instances, lead to a higher incidence of consanguineous marriages than in more connected regions. This was not necessarily born of a desire to violate taboos, but often out of a simple, desperate lack of choice. The social fabric of these communities was tightly woven, with kinship ties forming the bedrock of survival. Marriages between first cousins, for example, while now largely illegal or socially frowned upon in many U.S. states, were historically common across various socioeconomic strata, including prominent families seeking to consolidate wealth and power. The genetic implications of such unions, particularly those between siblings, are profound and well documented by modern science. Every human carries a number of recessive genes, which, when inherited from both parents, can lead to genetic disorders. In the general population, the likelihood of two unrelated individuals carrying the same rare recessive gene is low. However, when close relatives procreate, the probability of sharing identical recessive genes, inherited from a common ancestor, increases dramatically. This heightened genetic risk can manifest in offspring with a range of conditions, from increased susceptibility to certain diseases to more severe physical and cognitive impairments. The specific case of a man having children with his own sister represents the most extreme form of consanguinity, where the genetic overlap between parents is at its maximum. The biological children of such a union face the highest risk of inheriting two copies of harmful recessive genes, leading to a significantly elevated chance of birth defects, genetic disorders, and reduced viability. While precise historical data on sibling incest leading to offspring in the U.S. is understandably scarce, given the extreme taboo and legal prohibitions that have long existed, anecdotal evidence and medical case studies from isolated populations, both historically and globally, confirm the devastating genetic consequences. These are not merely abstract scientific principles, they are lived realities, often hidden in the shadows of family histories, marked by unexplained illnesses, deformities, and early deaths that, in earlier eras, were attributed to curses, divine punishment, or simply bad luck, rather than the underlying genetic mechanisms. The societal response to such relationships has evolved over time, but the core taboo against sibling incest has remained remarkably consistent across most human cultures. This universal aversion is often attributed to both biological imperatives, the avoidance of genetic defects, and social ones, the need to maintain clear family structures and prevent social chaos. Laws prohibiting incest, including sibling incest, have been in place in various forms throughout U.S. history, reflecting a deep-seated societal understanding of the harm such unions can cause, both to individuals and to the broader social order. However, the enforcement and awareness of these laws could vary significantly in remote areas where the arm of the law was long, but its reach was often limited. In such environments, the primary regulators of behavior were often community norms, religious beliefs, and the sheer practicalities of survival. The story we are about to delve into, while extreme, is a testament to the complex and often tragic circumstances that could arise when these forces converged. It is a narrative that forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that even in a nation built on ideals of freedom and progress, there are pockets of existence where human lives were shaped by forces beyond their control, where the choices were few and the consequences profound. It is a story not of judgment, but of historical context, genetic fate, and the enduring, often hidden, struggles of those who lived on the fringes of society, their lives a testament to the darker side of human isolation. The man at the center of this narrative, whose identity we will protect out of respect for the descendants and the sensitive nature of the topic, was born into a world that offered few alternatives. His family, like many in their secluded region, had lived for generations in a state of profound self-sufficiency, their lives dictated by the rhythms of the land and the limited interactions with the outside world. This isolation, while preserving a unique cultural heritage, also created a genetic bottleneck, a confined pool of genes that, over time, increased the likelihood of rare recessive traits
Subscribe to my
manifesting.
channel.
The specific circumstances that led to the union between this man and his sister are lost to the mists of time, obscured by the shame and secrecy that inevitably surround such relationships. Was it a desperate act born of loneliness and a lack of other options? Was it a consequence of ignorance regarding the biological risks? Or was it something more sinister, a deliberate transgression of societal norms driven by a warped sense of connection or control? The historical record, fragmented and often deliberately suppressed, offers few definitive answers. What remains, however, are the chilling echoes of its consequences. The birth of three sons, each carrying the indelible genetic markers of their parents' extreme consanguinity. These children, born into a world that offered them little understanding or medical intervention, would have faced immense challenges. Their lives, often short and marked by chronic illness or developmental issues, served as living, tragic testaments to the profound genetic risks inherent in such unions. Their existence, however hidden, would have been a constant, unspoken burden on the family, a secret that permeated every aspect of their lives and cast a long, dark shadow over their lineage. The story of this family, therefore, becomes a powerful, albeit disturbing, case study in the intersection of history, genetics, and sociology. It compels us to look beyond the sensational headline and consider the broader forces at play. The geographical isolation that limited choices, the lack of education and medical knowledge that obscured risks, and the desperate human need for connection that, in extreme circumstances, could lead to profoundly tragic outcomes. It is a narrative that forces us to confront the uncomfortable truths about our past, to understand that the complexities of human behavior are often shaped by forces far greater than individual will, and that the consequences of those forces can ripple through generations, leaving an indelible mark on the very fabric of a family's existence. This is not a story designed to sensationalize or condemn, but rather to illuminate a hidden chapter of American history, to understand the forces that shaped lives on the fringes, and to acknowledge the profound and often tragic impact of genetic inheritance in a world without modern medical understanding. It is a reminder that the past, in all its uncomfortable truths, holds lessons that continue to resonate in the present, urging us to approach such sensitive topics with empathy, historical context, and a commitment to understanding the full spectrum of the human experience. The narrative of this family, therefore, serves as a poignant, if disturbing, reminder of the historical prevalence of consanguineous unions in isolated pockets of the United States, particularly before the widespread availability of transportation, education, and modern medical understanding. While the specific details of this particular case are shrouded in the mists of time and the deliberate suppression of uncomfortable truths, the broader context of such relationships is well documented in sociological and genetic studies. The concept of a most inbred man is, of course, a hyperbolic framing designed to capture attention, but it points to the very real and observable genetic consequences of extreme endogamy. In communities where the gene pool is severely restricted, the likelihood of rare recessive alleles pairing up and expressing themselves as genetic disorders increases exponentially. This can lead to a higher incidence of congenital anomalies, developmental delays, reduced fertility, and increased susceptibility to various health conditions within the affected lineage. The historical record, though often incomplete due to the shame and secrecy surrounding such matters, provides glimpses into the lives of individuals and families who bore the visible and invisible marks of such genetic concentrations. These were often not individuals acting out of malice or a deliberate desire to violate taboos, but rather people trapped by circumstance, by geographical isolation, and by a profound lack of alternatives. Their stories, when unearthed, serve as powerful reminders of the human cost of limited choices and the relentless march of genetic fate. The narrative also touches upon the evolving understanding of incest and consanguinity within American society. While the taboo against sibling incest has been remarkably consistent, the legal and social attitudes towards cousin marriage, for example, have varied significantly across states and over time. This fluidity reflects a complex interplay of religious beliefs, scientific understanding, and changing social norms. The story of this family, therefore, is not just a historical curiosity. It is a lens through which we can examine the broader societal anxieties and scientific discoveries that have shaped our understanding of family, genetics, and morality. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that the past is not always a neat and tidy narrative, but a messy, complex tapestry woven with threads of both light and shadow, progress, and profound human struggle. And in understanding these darker threads, we gain a more complete, albeit unsettling, picture of the American experience. The very existence of such a narrative, however rare or extreme, underscores the importance of genetic diversity and the societal benefits of broader social interaction. It highlights the dangers of extreme isolation, not just in terms of genetic health, but also in the perpetuation of cycles that can be profoundly detrimental to individual well-being and societal progress. The story, therefore, serves as a cautionary tale, a historical echo that reminds us of the profound impact of our environment and our choices on the generations that follow. It is a narrative that, while disturbing, is essential for a comprehensive understanding of the human condition in all its varied and often challenging forms. The deliberate suppression of such stories from mainstream historical accounts is itself a significant sociological phenomenon, reflecting a collective discomfort with topics that challenge idealized notions of family and progress. But true history, in its raw and unfiltered form, demands that we look at all its facets, even the ones that make us squirm. Only then can we truly learn from the past and build a more informed and empathetic future. This script aims to do just that, to bring a hidden history to light, not to sensationalize, but to understand, to contextualize, and to learn from the profound and often tragic lessons embedded within the lives of those who lived on the fringes of societal norms. It is a story that, once heard, is difficult to forget, a testament to the enduring power of history to illuminate the darkest corners of the human experience. This is the story of the most inbred man in U.S. history, a story buried by America, now brought to light. The narrative of a man having children with his own sister, while shocking to contemporary ears, compels us to delve deeper into the historical and sociological nuances that could give rise to such extreme consanguineous unions in the United States. It is crucial to understand that these were not typically acts of deliberate defiance against societal norms, but often tragic consequences of profound isolation, limited social mobility, and a lack of awareness regarding genetic risks. In the early days of American settlement, particularly in frontier regions, communities were often formed by small groups of pioneers who ventured into undeveloped territories. These settlements, by their very nature, were geographically isolated, cut off from larger towns and cities by vast distances, difficult terrain, and rudimentary transportation networks. In such environments, the gene pool was inherently restricted. Marriage options were limited to the few families within walking or riding distance, leading to a higher incidence of unions between individuals who were, to varying degrees, related. While cousin marriages were more common and, in many historical contexts, socially acceptable, the extreme case of sibling procreation highlights the severe constraints some individuals faced. The lack of education, particularly in remote areas, meant that the scientific understanding of genetics and heredity was virtually non-existent. The concept of recessive genes and the increased risk of genetic disorders in offspring of close relatives was a medical revelation centuries away. Illnesses, deformities, and early deaths were often attributed to divine will, bad luck, or unknown environmental factors, rather than the biological consequences of consanguinity. This ignorance, coupled with the desperate need for labor on farms and the continuation of family lines, could inadvertently perpetuate cycles of consanguineous relationships.